And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very historic day once again on Australian Indian Radio and the live streaming by Gentex Multimedia Services. Hey, it's wonderful to have your company as usual. Well, the weather in Brisbane is nice and sunny now, but it was very, very foggy this morning, as you would have seen from my early morning post. Yes, cutting through the fog, this morning. It was a brisk walk, but, it was very good still. Being out there, seeing all our regulars still out there, even though you couldn't see, much further than where you were walking. But it was, again, good to be out there. Well, right now, today, there is a very historic day. The 24th of July happens to be the Guru Purnima. So, to all the gurus out there, it is our Sat Sat Naman for everyone. As we know in life, we cannot get ahead without a guru or a teacher. So, this is paying respect to all those teachers, all the gurus who have been out there. And of course, we know in Sikhism, they follow Guruji. And of course, there are many followers of many gurus in many organizations. So in anyone's life, they say, your first guru is your mom, Matra. जो है पहली guru. So that's why it is always on Guru Purnima, always remember your mom as well, because she is the first guru who gives you lessons in life. So, ladies and gentlemen, on this day also we will look at some glimpses of the opening ceremony of the Olympics in Tokyo. As we know, all the planning that had gone in, and of course knowing Japanese and the way they create things, that it would have been nothing short of being spectacular. But of course we know it's missing the crowds. So it's missing. When Brisbane won the right for 2032 Olympics, there were lots of talks within the circles, because we were at a business breakfast with the treasurer and many other dignitaries and politicians. And one of the things that came out was that normally in many countries, all the Olympics cost a lot of money and did not bring in the returns. Of course, it put that nation, that city on the map, but it came at a great cost, and in many places the infrastructure that was put in place was like a white elephant, which did not serve much purpose after the event. So Brisbane would be quite different, we've been told. Of course, the epicenter being the Gabba. So, it will be revamped and everything, but it's always been a sporting venue. So, it's not like putting in money where it's not going to be used afterwards. Many other venues will, of course, need to be done. Infrastructure will need to be put in place. Of course, accommodation and everything. And already, the talks are about how the rents would go up, how the property prices would go up as well. So anyone who has got an investment property in and around the city from now till the next 20 years, you're looking for a very good rental return. So these are the things. And of course, we will also be looking at the launch yesterday of the Sarang band in Brisbane. So there's lots to get through. So let's right now move on and let's see what's going to be happening in there. Right now, first of all, with the vaccine rollout, let's go to New South Wales, where 136 COVID-19 cases have been recorded, and it is in a state of emergency.
Thousands heeding the call to arms, but despite Sydney's best efforts, the city's losing its battle against Delta.
I have advised the government today that this is a national emergency and requires additional measures.
4 weeks into lockdown, yet another day of records. As the COVID crisis worsens, it's becoming clearer the rules won't be relaxed anytime soon.
I think it's the worry of, will I still have a job at the end of all this if lockdown goes any longer?
We can't really lock down indefinitely. We have to have a plan, have to have a figure, have to have a strong strategy to follow through.
But living freely is likely months away.
According to the federal vaccination rollout, by the end of October, we will be at a stage where much more of our population will be vaccinated and we'll be able to live much more freely beyond that point.
So until then, a targeted response will be deployed to crush the virus, starting in the Blacktown and Cumberland LGAs.
We don't want any workers leaving that area unless they're regarded as critical workers.
The Premier concedes the state can't recover from this emergency on its own.
From today, the New South Wales Government will be calling on the federal government to refocus our national vaccination strategy.
She wants mass vaccinations for southwest Sydney to slow the spread of this highly infectious strain, urging people to roll up their sleeves for either Pfizer or AstraZeneca.
I want to see them today. So let's be very clear. My sense of urgency is absolute urgency.
The key to keeping the economy going is vaccinating critical workers under 40, but a plea for help from interstate is falling on deaf ears.
I'm not wanting to send any of our vaccination doses anywhere else.
We have barely enough vaccine allocated to any of us.
And has quickly been dismissed by those in charge of the national rollout.
We are not going to disrupt the vaccination program around the rest of the country.
Suddenly deciding to throw a particular vaccine at one geographic area does not give you an immediate solution. At the moment, we don't have surplus Pfizer.
But there is a lot of AstraZeneca, and while it's currently recommended for over 60s, doctors want that to change.
It may be time for clear advice to all young Australians in Sydney that AZ is a very safe and effective vaccine.
That may prove to be the fast track to freedom.
We'll be working hard over the weekend and early next week to provide a roadmap.
A roadmap desperately needed.
And that roadmap is desperately needed. We did briefly hear from IMA there. So let's take a look at the IMA's full report.
And it's quite possible that Australia's lockdown strategy that's worked so well with all the previous outbreaks we've had is simply not strong enough, not fast enough to deal with Delta. And it's possible a new approach, in particular for Sydney, but possibly for the rest of the country, will be required. Now, any new strategy for Sydney is going to include vaccination. That's very clear, and it's been said today by the New South Wales Government. We've also heard that New South Wales wants Pfizer vaccines from the rest of the country, and whilst we're sure that's being discussed very robustly at National Cabinet as we speak, it's not likely that large amounts of Pfizer are going to find their way into New South Wales anytime soon. So what that means is we need to take a new approach. And the AMA today has been in contact with one of the co-chairs of ATAGI to advise ATAGI that in our view it is time to reconsider the advice around the AstraZeneca vaccine for young Australians, given the reality in Sydney. When ATAGI made its original advice on the under 50s and then the under 60s, it was in the setting of a choice between waiting for Pfizer for younger Australians in the setting of very little risk of COVID, or having AZ now. Whereas for Sydney-siders, it could be a choice between having AZ now and having no vaccine, and therefore having COVID. And we know that COVID is so much more dangerous than any vaccine. So what we are suggesting to ATAGI is that the settings in Sydney are different, the reality is different, and it may be time for clear advice to all young Australians in Sydney that AZ is a very safe and effective vaccine, and it's the best way to help Sydney get out of this current crisis.
And of course, getting out of the current crisis and looking at the advice, once again, I find it a little bit confusing. Once, we've been saying that Pfizer, then we're saying AstraZeneca, then we're changing the date, the age limits. So what is it? What will going to happen? Let's hear from our Prime Minister.
The goal has not changed. Suppression is the primary tool to achieve that, and vaccines can help that. To that end, we discussed and will be confirming over the next 24 hours the ability in New South Wales, in their state vaccine centres, for them to do greater amounts of first doses by staying within the medical advice, the ATAGI advice, which says that second doses of Pfizer can be extended out to 6 weeks. So that is an existing regulation, it is an existing approval, it is an existing medical advice. So to increase the amount of first doses that can be delivered, maximising greater the supply we have available, then we're working to put that in place in New South Wales because of the situation that exists there. And that is important to be able to achieve. In the same way, we've had the flexibility to bring forward AstraZeneca second doses. Now, that is especially important for all of the population but in particular those who are elderly, who I've said are most at risk during a COVID outbreak. So I'm very keen to ensure that if you haven't had your second dose, if it's been 4 weeks, then please book yourself in for that second dose so you can protect yourself in the midst of this particular outbreak, and we'd encourage you to do that.
And of course, you are encouraged to do that. As has been mentioned, that the doses are now safe, and the new age limits have been put in place there as well. But right now, let's go to Victoria, where Victoria has recorded 14 new cases.
Jade Duffy's dance studio is usually full, but the music has gone quiet over the past 18 months.
We've lost 3 productions, which it's a big thing for us.
Her business is among the thousands in Victoria hit hard during the pandemic. But after months of bad news, an act of kindness has turned things around.
My students have set up a fundraiser for me and they've raised $13,000.
It's just a really amazing community, and I really hope she feels big love from all of us.
I'm just so proud of them all and so grateful.
When businesses can open again will depend on whether the state's 5th lockdown will be lifted on time.
It's very difficult for us today on Friday to be able to predict what will happen next Tuesday at midnight, but I would say that the trend is with us. These results are very encouraging.
One person who works at Casey Hospital tested positive, sending 40 other staff into isolation. There are still more than 400 exposure sites, including this apartment complex in Richmond, listed as a Tier 2 location. Authorities are continuing to chase down people who may have been exposed to the virus at the Paran market over the weekend.
I expect that we'll get good coverage of those results over the next 24 hours.
With so many businesses closed, more than 25,000 Victorians rushed to apply for the federal government's COVID-19 disaster payments when they open today. Between $375 and $600 a week will be provided to those who've lost work.
The gruelling reality is that for the people who have the least, many of them are excluded from the disaster relief payments.
The end of this lockdown might be in sight, but the next few days will be critical. Christian Silva, ABC News.
And of course, the next few days will be very critical as, we will be keeping an eye on the situation just to see how things are going and how things are travelling. It is a bit worrying there as well. Well, right now, UNESCO has put Australia's Great Barrier Reef on probation. And as I've said many times before, look, if you are that really concerned, you should let it go for a while. Cease all activities that are happening there, which is open to general public, so that it recoups, because it needs to grow in its own natural habitat without the interference. And when people come there, all the interference that takes place, without knowing, it does have an effect. It does have an impact. There are all these outboard motors going there, all these people who are diving, touching those reefs, meddling with it. Of course, the environmental effects are there, and those, the argument about the climate change cannot be ruled out completely, though it might not be the only contributing factor. There are other contributing factors as well. If we really are that crowd, it should be just closed to general public and everyone, just being monitored very carefully until it recovers. Let it grow back in its own natural way. Let it, be to its own cause. But no, we are humans. We keep doing the things we like, and of course, and keep blaming others. Well, here's the report.
Our reaction is that the World Heritage Committee has put the Australian government back on probation for its management of the Great Barrier Reef. This gives Australia a very short time frame to get its house in order, particularly on climate change. Currently, Australia's climate change policy is not consistent with giving the reef its best future. So we had that short period for Australia to dramatically lift its ambition on climate policy.
Apart from reputational damage on the global stage, what does it actually mean to be listed in danger?
Well, I think it's not to downplay that impact of reputational damage. I think Australians have a great passion for the Great Barrier Reef, and also we all feel a great responsibility of being custodians with global treasure. In practical terms, though, of course, the tourism industry benefits hugely from the health of the Great Barrier Reef. Pre-COVID, the Great Barrier Reef brought in around $6 billion a year to the Australian economy and provide jobs to 64,000 Australians. That change in reputation that you mentioned potentially impacts those jobs going forward. So it's really, really important that finally the Australian government steps up and takes climate change seriously and water pollution seriously to give the reef a fighting chance.
And as I mentioned before, that it needs when we have fires, when we're looking at COVID-19. So if we have an outbreak, what do? We lock down. So if the reef has those kind of problems, that too should be locked down. I know when we're looking at the tourism dollars and everything, so you need to look at what do you place your value on. Do you want to see the reef revive and survive, or is just the tourist dollars more important rather than the reef itself? Of course, a lot has been said about climate change, about the mining that's having an impact of them, but we always turn a blind eye when we look at some of the other causes of what has caused this deterioration there as well. Well, welcome everyone to the show. Devika, welcome. Good to see you there. Chandana, wonderful to have you on the show as well. And JP Soni sahab, so he's got his Pfizer on July 21st. Second one is booked for August 13. Wishing you all the best with that. Mine is in the first week of August for the second one. I did feel a little bit after that, but according to JP Soni, no pains and no worries, and thanks to the PM, he says. So wonderful once again to have you on the show as well. But don't forget that this is July. So after 30th June, what becomes a time? It becomes a tax time. So here's some tips from ITO.
It's tax time. About 14 million of us will need to file a tax return. It can be a bit daunting, but it's worth putting in the effort. Last year, the average return was about $3,000. To make things easier, I'm here at the ATO and I'm going to be getting some tips from Assistant Commissioner Tim Lowe. Hi Tim, how are you?
Hi Nassim, how are you?
Good, thank you. I've got some questions for you. So, Australians love their work-related expenses. What can people claim for?
It really depends on the job that you have. So if you're a chef, you can claim the knives. If you're a hairdresser, you can claim the scissors. But if you're an office worker, you can't claim any of those costs. So it really depends on the job that you do.
And what about things that people have had to use during COVID, like face masks and hand sanitisers and gloves?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've been in front-facing jobs with people, so healthcare workers, like doctors and nurses, you can claim a deduction for your hand sanitiser, your gloves, and your face masks.
If people have been able to work from home during the pandemic, what are the things that they can and can't claim for?
There's a couple of things to remember. You need to make sure that it's work-related. So for example, with internet costs, if you've been using it for work and you've also been using it for Netflix, you can claim the bit for work, but you can't claim the bit for Netflix. In terms of what you can't claim at home, you can't claim tea, coffee and biscuits, even if your employer normally provides them.
And now there's a tax shortcut. Tell me about it.
All you need to do is work out the number of hours you've been working from home, multiply that by 80 cents per hour, and that is your deduction for all your working from home expenses. The only thing you need to do is keep a record of the number of hours you've been working from home.
Gig economy workers like Uber drivers and delivery riders sometimes forget to report income. What's your advice to them?
My advice to them is if you've been doing some deliveries, driving people around, or even running an online business, you need to include that income in your tax return. One thing to remember is that if you have incurred some expenses directly related to earning that gig income, you can claim a tax deduction for it. You just got to make sure that you've got a record for it.
And we know that more people are getting into crypto. About 600,000 people trade crypto assets like Bitcoin. What's your advice to them?
One thing we want people to know is that cryptocurrency is taxed like other investment assets, like shares. So when you sell, swap or exchange cryptocurrency, there are capital gains tax consequences coming out of that. So for example, if you swap Bitcoin for Dogecoin, that is a taxable transaction.
Any final tips for people who are about to lodge their tax returns?
Yeah, we like people to lodge at the end of July, and the reason why we say that is because a lot of third-party information from employers, banks, government agencies and health funds gets automatically included in your tax return.
Thanks for the advice, Tim.
Thanks, Sam.
And thank you very much, ITO. And don't forget that we will be running some seminars, online seminars with ITO for the multicultural communities, and especially for the small to medium-sized businesses as well, taking into account the reporting that have to be put in place for the job keeper that they would have received, which actually goes in as income. Well, right now, moving on, we'll go to India, where landslides and flooding leaves at least 112 dead in India.
कितने लोग हैं? ये तो तांबा सोबतच जाऊया. पुढे तर भरपूर आहे सॉलिड एकदम.
This year we have seen a lot of natural disasters in India.
और इसको कितनी जल्दी बोला सर बोला
So, as I mentioned before, that today we will also be looking at some of the glimpses of the opening ceremony of Tokyo Olympics, but first of all, I'd like to wish once again everyone happy Guru Purnima, wishing you all the best for Guru Purnima. As we know, today at 3 p.m. we have the Asu Babu Memorial Concert, which is the concert of all the students of Sen Flindell. Sen teaches tabla as a tabla student. He paid tribute to his guru, and we have always been supporting and sponsoring that program. So at 3 p.m. I will be there. If you haven't booked already, tickets are available. You can book online and come and attend this wonderful ceremony. It is heartwarming to see all the students learning tabla, and it is again wonderful to see that our knowledge, customs, tradition, and the classical music is being passed on to our new generation. And Sen, in that regards, is doing a wonderful job. So anyone who does those kind of job, we can't call it job, that kind of service, I should say, to the community, we always like to support them. So, be it Bharatnatyam classes, be it classical music, be it Carnatic music, we are always there. So at the moment, I'm serving as the president of Queensland Sangeet Mela Association, and I'm the patron of Sangeet Premi Club. And of course, yesterday we saw the launch of Sarang band, which is again a multicultural sort of band. And Pavitra Nuri, thank you so much for putting that concert together. We'll see if I can launch some of the glimpses from there, and let's take a look at that. So there you are, the launch yesterday, and it included many artists from many different parts of India. Of course, our neighboring country as well, Bangladesh. That singer was from Bangladesh. So as you can see from those glimpses that it was a wonderful night, and the group there, they performed many different numbers, including ghazals, qawwalis, Punjabi folk, Pahari numbers as well. So it was good to see it being launched yesterday, and of course we will probably be seeing more of them in the future as well. So it was good to be part of the opening ceremony yesterday, and thanks, Paviter, for the invitation and being there as well. So some of the musicians there, as we know almost all of them from a long time, always being interested in the music scene. So we see them coming all the time. So as I mentioned before, that we will also be looking at some of the scenes from the opening ceremony of the Tokyo. Well, of course, I can't bring the glimpses of the video because of copyrights. Otherwise, we need to first of all secure that, and it will be restreamed via some channels, and then we will restream that. But we can definitely look at some of the images that came out of there yesterday, and as we will see from those images that it was nothing sort of being spectacular. Just look at that stadium, and of course look at all the provisions that they were put in place. And if it wasn't for this COVID, so many people would have been there. So they did spend a lot of money doing this. And of course, just look at that. It's just amazing the amount of work that they would have put in the place. And once again, some amazing images of the opening. And of course, I don't have the photos right now, but I've seen the images there of Team Australia, Team India, and Team Fiji, and all of those teams, and everyone cheering for them as well as they made their way to the opening ceremony. And look at that stadium. Doesn't that just look spectacular? And of course, as I mentioned before, that if it wasn't for the COVID-19, that would have been packed to capacity. So it is coming. They did still decide, there's Team Italy there, they did still decide to go ahead with it despite all the restrictions, because so much of preparation had already gone into the place. So as you can see from these amazing images, some of these ones, the crowd might not be the actual crowd there at that point in time. They have been put in or superimposed, but this is a spectacular event, and we will keep you up to date with what's happening there in the coming days as we go through all the events. Well, right now, let's another upcoming event is Sarang Music and their event. So, of course, as I mentioned before, be it any kind of musical event, we always like to support them. So we are also supporting Sarang Music Academy. Hello everyone, my name is Umesh Chandra.
And my name is Usha Chandra. Namaskar.
And we represent Brisbane Indian Times.
And Australian Indian Radio.
And of course, we are very proud to be supporting the students of Sarang Music Academy.
Yes, we have been supporting Sarang Music Academy since its inception.
And as we know that, I'm quite passionate about music, and of course, I'd like to support, all the music one. And what the Sarang Music Academy has been doing is imparting that knowledge onto our youngsters. And unless we part on the knowledge to our youngsters, in the upcoming years, our arts and culture and this tradition will be gone. So my hats off to Mithun and Bondita for doing what they're doing, especially teaching the children that music, which is very, very important, which is an integral part of our customs and traditions, and in moving forward, keeping that up and devoting time into that is what we really, really appreciate. So wishing them all the best for their upcoming show. We'd like to see you all there. And as I said before, Brisbane Indian Times and Australian Indian Radio are proudly supporting the event, and of course supporting Sarang Music Academy.
Wishing you all the best. Thank you.
And right now, we look at some of the functions and events taking place. So Guru Purnima, this is actually happening right now at the Vedanta Center. And next up, we will look at Arpan, which is done by the Nritya Bharati School. And of course, Nimita Debroy always does an amazing job with that. And of course, the concert that I was talking about before, which is taking place today from 3 p.m. And it is at the Queensland Multicultural Centre. We'd like to see you all there today. And of course, not forgetting the India Day Fair, which is on the 15th of August at South Bank Piazza this year. So it is going to be a wonderful event this year, undercover and on South Bank Piazza on the 15th of August this year. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for in the weekend edition. And as I mentioned before, it is always so good to see you. And we'd like to once again mention that if you have any function, event, or any topic that you'd like to talk to us about, we're quite welcome to contact us, and we will bring you up on our studio. You are quite welcome to come join us in here in the studio, and we will talk about that. And don't forget that every Wednesday we have the real estate update with Usha Chandra, and on Thursdays we have the travel updates with Tanvi Goyal, and of course the migration ka safar, all the migration tips with Suman Dua, and many other interviews, news and updates throughout the week. So it's been a pleasure having your company on this Saturday, the 24th of July, on the Divas of Guru Purnima, and it is going to be a very significant day. There's so many functions happening today, so it's just going to be running from one to another. We'll bring you all the update as they happen, and as I mentioned before, there's lots that are happening. So until Monday, it's goodbye from me. Enjoy the weekend. Do go out to functions, but always be careful that you follow the restrictions, follow the advice that is put in place by the event organizers, and of course by the respective territories, and of course our federal government as well. So if we follow those rules and regulations, we will not only be safeguarding our own health and safety, but also the community at large. So it is our duty. It is our duty to, be vigilant, to do the right thing. So until Monday, it's goodbye from me.